Hey everybody, Tactical Boondoggle here. Just wanted to do something a little different today. What I have here is what I'll call my 9mm roundup. Just want to go through and talk about all of the different pros and cons of some 9mm that I was able to get my hands on. Starting from the 12 o'clock position, this is the CZP01, CZP07, HKP30S, Caracal C, Glock 19 Gen 4, Walther PPQ, FNH FNX9, and then on the side, because it wouldn't fit here in my little star of pistols, the Smith & Wesson Shield, and representing the 1911 frame is the Wesson Guardian. Just so all you people out there that are safety conscious are aware, all these pistols before filming were verified to be safe, and therefore I'm not going to go through checking them all on camera, just trying to save a little bit of time. So just starting right off the bat, again, what I want to do is just discuss some of the pros and cons, and I might do a little bit of size comparison between some of them. So I'm going to start out with the CZP01. Some of the pros. First off and foremost, the ergonomics. I really enjoy the ergonomics of this pistol. It has a really nice contoured grip. It's got some nice rubbery style hand grip guard pieces here. They're just really textured. They feel really good in your hands. I also like that it's a full metal frame. Granted, a lot of these others here are polymer frame. I particularly like that it's a metal frame. The reliability on this pistol is a major pro. Out of the bunch here, the two most reliable in my book would be the P01 and the Glock 19. This pistol does in fact meet all the NATO specifications, hence the NATO stock number there on the side. And this puppy has been through its rigors and been proven over many years to be extremely reliable. The magazine. This particular magazine holds 14. However, there are extended magazines that I believe hold something on the order of 34 rounds, and they're available through CZ or other outlets. And therefore, having that extended magazine capability for a pistol does of course make it a force multiplier, so that's definitely something to be aware of. Now, one of the last pros I have is being able to take something like this guy, which is a cadet conversion kit. I know it's a little oily, just cleaned it, but what this is it's a 22 conversion kit, and being able to take the top off of this guy, you pull this pin out and you're able to swap this out. It allows to train with this exact ergonomic trigger, everything, decocker, everything with this particular frame, and put a 22 on it. So you get very used to handling this pistol. So moving on to some of the cons. The first con that I've seen a couple people complain about is the small amount of grip area on the slide here. I particularly haven't had a problem with it, but I'm just trying to represent some of the concerns of the public that people have informed me of anyway. And as far as purchase area goes, it's something that's just, if you're in a very quick needing to grab type scenario, you may want to grab the whole thing and you'll end up sliding to something smaller. Whether that becomes an issue is something that is to be evaluated by the user, but for me it hasn't necessarily been an issue. It is a tad bit wide for the pistol, and the pistol I'm going to compare it to is the Glock 19. Now, the Glock 19 doesn't have any side pieces that stick out, and when you compare the width of the CZ, especially at the grips and the decocker here, you can really see the width. And so it's kind of one of those things that, if you're going to carry this thing, that's going to become a potential concern, whether or not that's going to be jabbing you in the side, or whether or not this is really going to fit well in a holster. or depending on how you carry it. And you know, every bit of width is something to be concerned about with anything that you're potentially going to carry. The last con I've got for this guy, because I'm trying to keep this puppy short, is it's not the best trigger. It's a rather long trigger for the double action, and for the single action there's a lot of take up there, but it's not the best trigger. I'll get onto that with the CZ P07, but it's not the worst trigger either. Moving on to the CZ75 P07. The pros, the mag release. It's actually got a really rather ergonomic mag release. If I can kind of show the mag release, it's actually kind of contoured a little bit to the frame there. You can kind of see there's a flat piece that's back here, and then you have another flat piece that's kind of here on the front side. So it kind of contours to the frame a little bit. The large trigger guard, it allows for shooting this thing with gloves, which, you know, in the winter months it's kind of nice. The polymer frame, this is CZ's, I believe, their second pistol that they've come out with the polymer frame. I believe the Rammy came out with a polymer frame, and it's actually no longer available. So this is one of the other pistols that's available. One of the pros that some people would consider a pro, others would maybe consider a con, is the variability with the safety and decocker. This piece right here is actually able to be swapped out and become a safety. And what you do is you pull the slide off and you're able to swap this out. That's part of the CZ Omega trigger system. And this actually has a much different trigger than the P01. So this trigger is actually not as bad. It still has a lot of take up, but I think it's a much smoother trigger and a little bit cleaner braking trigger. The last piece that as pro goes is, like I said, the trigger is a little bit better than the CZ P01, and it's better than a couple of the other ones I'll go through here, but not as good as some of the other ones I'll go through. Now, cons. Ergonomics. This doesn't have as good ergonomics as, say, the P01, and coming from CZ, that's a little bit of a disappointment. Additionally, there's no back strap changes. What you see is what you get. There's no side strap, no back strap changes, and so when you're grabbing this pistol, if your hand's too big, too small, or anything to that effect, that's all you get. There's no variability in the grip size. And the last piece is you know, the grip texture is decent, but I think it could be improved just a tad bit with a little bit of the rubberizing like that the CZ P01 has. I really like that, and I think it helps get a good purchase on the grip. So that's all I got to say about the P07. Moving on. HK P30S. Number one, first and foremost, ergonomics are probably the best of the bunch here. They are so adjustable. You have adjustable back straps, you have adjustable side straps. The stippling or the grip texture here, not really stippling, it's more just texture, is really nice. It gives you a really good grasp on the pistol without really tearing up your hand. It's just a very, very nice grip. The safety and decocker. Now, this is probably one of the most unique aspects of this pistol. If you were to cock it, you can decock it with this back piece here, this button that's on the side of the hammer. You press this and it decocks the pistol. You also have a safety, a separate safety that allows you to run this decocked and safe. You can run it cocked and locked, and it's a very affirmative safety. So with that ability of having this decocker on the back, you can actually decock it while it's in your holster, which I kind of think is a really nice aspect of this pistol. The reliability of this, again, is another pro. There's been some tests run. One I read about had 91,000 rounds pushed through one of these, and no major malfunction of the pistol occurred. So that's definitely something to say as far as reliability. Now, cons. This has by far the worst trigger ever that I've ever felt on a pistol. The trigger is just, one, it's really long, it's really kind of sloppy, It's just, I really do not like this trigger, especially decocked. It's really hard. It's extremely hard. I mean, it feels like this thing's 15 pounds. It probably isn't, but it just feels really heavy. It's really long. I just particularly don't like it. The next piece I'm talking about for a con, some people may not consider a con. It's a con for me, but many people may not consider it a con, and it's the mag release. This mag release is slightly different than most other pistols that I'm used to, and that's my personal preference. That is, it's on the side of the trigger guard. And so what happens is, I'm used to the thumb types mag release, and when I'm finished shooting, I want to hit it with my thumb, and then I end up remembering, oh yeah, that's right, this is on the trigger, so I use my trigger finger. Again, in your heated type situation, if you pull this pistol and you haven't trained with it, that could be something that may not be good. You know, being able to reload your magazine and you're like, oh, where's my mag? Oh yeah, you know, that may be the precious second difference of getting another mag in and not. You know, you never know. So just, I guess what I'm saying is, if you're gonna get a pistol like this, train with this type of pistol, that way you get used to the magazine release. Last piece I'm going to talk about a con, which may not be fair, but in this realm of pistols, this thing is $1,100. The rest of these pistols are generally in the $500 to $600 range, so this is more than double of those type pistols, and in my opinion, I'd rather have 2 Glocks. Just plain and simple. And maybe, or 1 Glock and do a bunch of modifications to it for $1,100, you know. That's a lot of money. So, again, moving on, Caracal. This is the absolute best trigger out of this bunch, in my opinion. It has the best trigger pull. I believe it to be something like 4.8 pounds. And the reset on it is very audible and tactile, and it's short. It's about, I believe it's a, I can't remember what the reset on it is. Something like 0.4 of an inch maybe. I'd have to go back and look that up. The bore axis, that's another major factor, and you can see actually I've been shooting this until I found out about the recall on it, but I won't go into that until I get to the cons. But the bore axis, if I look at something like the PPQ, you can see that the bore axis is quite a bit higher. So this has probably the lowest or second to lowest bore axis of any of the pistols laying here. This is the Glock's. Pretty daggone close. So what that does is reduces felt recoil, and in doing so, it leads to another pro, is the being able to get the pistol back onto the sights, back onto your target, the reacquisition of target. So when you have less recoil, you're able to get it right back onto the target like you want and get more shots on target. Another pro is the low number of parts. This, I believe, has something on the order of 28 parts. That makes it easy to maintain, less parts to worry about when you're taking it apart, putting it back together, those kinds of things. The other aspect is the sight radius, a really long sight radius. With this sight being as far back as it is, it's basically part of this back plane. It really makes the sight radius really long and allows for a really good sight picture as far as being able to use the pistol for the sight radius and being able to get a good shot off and pretty accurate. Now, as far as cons, there's just as many cons as there are pros, just like pretty much every one of these pistols. The questionable quality, now they have had 2 recalls, one being on the trigger, being that if you drop it on the back corner, there's a potential for the trigger to go off. Is that fair? Well, how many other pistols, if you dropped, could go off? I don't know, but Caracal has decided to do a recall because of that. The second is there was some metallurgical quality issues on some other pistols where there was actually a case of a slide breaking in half on a section or in a set number of slides, and they have since recalled those as well, the set serial numbers and the serial numbers on the underside of the slide there. So it just makes you kind of question the quality of the pistol. You know, if they're having those problems, obviously they're catching them and they're getting them fixed, but you know, no pistol isn't without its growing pains. Even Glocks, you know, they had the spring issue, things like that. And I mean, even the 4th gen Glocks have had their numbers of spring issues and things like that. Everybody's had their growing pains. So not necessarily defending the Caracal, but you know, things happen and we all learn from them. From the ergonomic standpoint, I think the pistol, for me, the Caracal C has pretty decent ergonomics. I can't complain about them, but I think they could be improved to a Caracal or even like a Walther or HK level of ergonomics. You know, a little bit of the finger grip wells there, maybe a back strap adjusted, or adjustable back strap, or replaceable back strap. Stuff like that would just be an extra notch on the Caracal that would improve it. Could have a better finish. This slide finish is a little slippery actually, and compared to the other finishes of these other pistols, I think this could be improved. There's been already cases of people that I've seen pictures of the Caracal already rubbing off the finish on the front part of the slide there as they holster the Caracal. Last con is the sights actually being a tad bit questionable. One being that you can see there's very little daylight on the back sight to allow for visibility of the target as you're shooting. And second, the sight, the little dots are plastic, and there's been cases of the back one falling out. Now if that happened to me, I would actually fill that in with some kind of a filler, like a you know, a resin or some sort of a glue that would be colored like yellow or orange, and call it a day anyway. But it's something that kind of makes you wonder again about the quality. Moving on, Glock 19. What's not to love about a Glock, right? Parts and availability of Glocks are just everywhere in the United States. Now the same could be said about the P01 in the European type areas. You can't go wrong with the parts and availability of CZ overseas. The reliability and great customer service at Glock, I've rarely heard of any type of issues with customer service relating to this type pistol. Any Glocks, you know, you send in an old Glock, they'll replace all kinds of parts for you, send it back to you for free. Just great customer service. The trigger and the reset. The trigger, you know, this is kind of the standard by which many other guns are judged for resets and trigger. Like I said, I think the Caracal's a little bit better trigger, but Glock's not bad by any means. The weight of the pistol's actually rather light. It's I don't have the exact specs of the weight, but for carrying this thing, it's not bad, and you're not going to feel like you've got a brick on your hip when you're carrying this thing. The same that went for the CZP01 is there's high capacity magazines for these guys. Anything all the way up to 50 rounds is available for the Glock. So again, force multiplier, never a bad day to have more rounds available. This carries 15 rounds, but having the availability of more rounds means less reloads and the ability to get more shots off. Again, same thing with the CZ. The Glock also offers a conversion kit. You replace the slide, you put a 22 slide on the top here. You know, there's the first brand that came to my mind is Tactical Solutions makes one. Fantastic replacement upper or slide there, and you can train with the pistol that you may be carrying and get used to the trigger, used to the reset, used to everything other than the recoil and, you know, reacquisition of sights and the target. Otherwise, you know, the Gen 4 now does come with the adjustable back strap, so that's a pro. Cons wise, for my hand, I have kind of fat knuckles, and when I grab this pistol, the trigger guard edge just happens to rub right on the inside of my knuckle. And as I'm shooting, it just beats that knuckle up, and it just, for my hand, of course, that's my con, and I don't really like it. The Glock 17 fits my hand a little better, but I'm trying to keep these pistols all within the same size. The other thing that I don't particularly like, and this actually goes for the Caracal as well, no front slide serrations. You know, one thing that some people will do is use the front slide to be able to check back here whether or not they have a round loaded, and it can be a bit slippery. It's something that can be added, and being that a pro is that there's a whole lot of gunsmiths out there that work on Glocks, it's really easy to add those. So just one thing that I think Glock could improve on. Moving on, Walther PPQ. This trigger for pro is second to the Caracal. It's got a fantastic trigger. A bit of a take up there, but rather light. It's a really nice trigger. I really enjoy this trigger. I really do like that trigger. I just can't say enough about the trigger. Ergonomics are almost exactly like the HK. Fantastic grip, fantastic purchase on the handle there. It's just adjustable back straps, no adjustable side straps, but I don't really think that's needed. And the sight radius on this pistol is also really good. They move the sights as far back as they possibly could, and I kind of appreciate that. So Walther PPQ, good job for that one. The high bore axis is the first con, and comparing to something like the Glock, you can see that the bore axis is quite a bit higher. Again, if I were to compare to the Caracal, same kind of thing. You can see that the bore axis is quite a bit higher, and what that does is it creates leverage on the pistol, which when the projectile is coming out at a higher position, more muzzle flip, more felt recoil, just felt by the shooter. So just something to be considering on this type pistol. If you're a little bit more recoil shy, granted these are all 9mm, this guy's got a little bit more felt recoil. Again, as far as the mag release goes, same kind of thing as the HK. It's along the trigger guard. Just something to train with. I don't want to repeat everything I said about the HK, but same exact thing. Continuing on. The FNH FNX9. Great company reputation. You know, they've got a lot of military contracts. You just can't go wrong with the company as far as the reputation, customer service. On this particular pistol, it has a decocker and a safety all in one lever. And I really like that from a functional standpoint, that it's all in one piece. I have the selection of just decocking and running, or decocking and running safe. Or I can do cocked and locked. It's all right on one lever. I don't have to mess with two levers or anything, or I don't just have one selected option. I've got both. Again, going back to this FNX9, this is the little brother to the FNX 45 Tactical, which I absolutely love the Tactical. I don't really have a lot of problem with this pistol, but again, it's pretty light. It represents the FNX line really well. The recoil's not bad. In fact, this was designed to actually hold the barrel in the slide a little bit longer in the recoil phase, and so what that does is it reduces the recoil just a tad bit on this pistol. That's about it for pros. Cons, I hate the grip stifling. This grip is absolutely painful. I complain about it on the 45 as well. When you're trying to grab it really well, you're not going to lose it. If you're shooting with gloves, it's great because you're not going to end up with the little stippling marks in your hand. But when I've shot this, I almost always complain about the grip texture is just not very nice, especially when I've shot things like the HK and the Walther that just have really nice grips. The ergonomics of the grip kind of suck. real flat. You know, they're basically like the CZ. And they do have one adjustable back strap, but it doesn't do a whole lot for the pistol's grips. And the last piece I'm going to talk about is the trigger. This trigger, I believe, is really bad. It's kind of long, it's kind of gritty, especially if you decock it. It's really, really tough, whereas the decocked CZs are a little better in my opinion. Just something to, you know, complain about. Really, I can't say too many bad things about the FNX. Okay, the last two I got to talk about here is one being the Smith & Wesson MP Shield. Going through the pros, the size, the weight, this pistol is just absolutely tiny in my hand. It's borderline pocket pistol-ish. You compare size-wise to the Glock 19, and you can just see the length is shorter. If you have the flush-fitting magazine in, it's about maybe 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Grip length-wise, shorter. And then you can just see from the width perspective that the Glock is about 1.18 inches wide, where the Smith & Wesson I think is like 0.92 or 0.98. So it's much thinner or slimmer. And weight-wise, you know, it holds much less rounds, so you're going to have quite a bit less weight as far as capacity going is in there. So, but you're also going to have much less weight just because of the overall size. The safety, this is something that some people may call a pro, some people may call a con. You know, if you don't want to use it, don't. It's a very affirmative safety. You can hear me clicking it. And I've never felt like I'm going to accidentally activate the safety while I'm shooting. You know, it's up pretty high, and it's flush enough that I don't feel like I'm accidentally going to flip it. Now, the con of it is, of course, if you don't train with it and you go to shoot it, you know, you're going to know right away this thing ain't moving. But moving on, as far as the cons, the capacity, you know, this puppy's only a 7, and then you'd have maybe 1 in the chamber, or the other magazine is an 8 plus 1, so you'd have 8 in this guy and 1 in here. And one of the cons with this particular guy is when you put the extended magazine in, all of a sudden the grip length grows to be basically the same length of a Glock 19. And I mean, I have them perfectly lined up, but they're pretty close. Well, that becomes kind of something that you're going to worry about when you're printing. You know, one of the most common parts of the pistol that prints is the grip there, the handle. So having the extended, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, one of the other things is, and I know Mac talks about this, Military Arms Channel, is this piece here can slide up, and if you go to put this in the pistol, it can kind of slow you down. If you're going to use this, glue it. That's what Mac suggests. That's what I would suggest too. You know, Military Arms Channel, Sturm Guri, whatever that guy's name is, he's pretty smart. Really enjoy his videos, and I definitely agree with his suggestion of gluing this puppy on there. Going back to this, as far as cons go, like I said, the round count. When you're in the heat of battle, you never know how many rounds you're going to need, but some people would say less is more, some people would say more is more. I prefer to have as many rounds as I need, and you never know. And if I'm going to carry something of this size, I'm definitely going to carry another magazine. You should always carry another magazine, but just something to be cognizant of is this doesn't have necessarily the same amount of round count as basically all the rest of these. The least one is, I think, the CZP-01 with 14 rounds. Last piece is recoil management and this trigger. I'm not a big fan of the split trigger. It kind of results in a bit of a mushy trigger in my opinion. This trigger is better than the Smith & Wesson M&P line of all the rest of the M&P or Smith & Wesson M&P pistols. This is their improved trigger, which I believe is going to be applied to the new lineup coming out late 2013. So just something to be aware of. It is a better trigger than their current ones, but I still think it could be improved. And of course the recoil management, being that this is a bit smaller, you know, your pinky kind of hangs off if you're using the flush fit mounted or the flush fit magazine. So just something to be a little concerned about as far as muzzle flip and things like that. And the bore axis is a tad bit higher. You know, you look at the Glock again, and it's just a tad bit higher. Well, every bit counts. So just something to be cognizant of. Last piece is the Wesson Guardian. I just threw this in here, being that it's a 1911 frame. You know, the 1911 people are gonna want to have their say, and I definitely love the 1911s. So it's just something, if you're used to it, you're gonna like it. A big advantage of this is it does have a bobtail, which helps in reducing the printing. Recoil management. This is a fully metal frame, metal slide, and therefore it's a little bit heavier, so the recoil on it's actually going to be reduced just because of the weight. And the build quality on this thing is just fantastic. You know, no barrel movement when the slide's in there. The trigger is awesome. There's all your take up, and it's just a super light trigger, maybe 3.5 pounds or so. Just really nice trigger. You know, Wesson uses very good parts. They use a lot of, I think it's Ed Brown parts. Just a very well built pistol. Now the cons, there's always cons about every pistol out there. This one of mine would be capacity. Again, you know, same kind of thing going back with the Shield. If I'm going to carry a pistol, I kind of want it to have as many rounds as possible for the size that it is. And when you start looking at the size of this thing, you know, it's about the same height, width, size. You know, it's even longer and a little bit taller, and I get half as many rounds. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you love the 1911 frame, this is the type pistol that you may want to go with. Or maybe just a smaller one. You know, Wesson makes ones like the Eco and stuff like that. It is a tad bit heavy, being that it's all made out of metal. And the last con would be the high price. This thing's, I think, on the order of $1,300, $1,400. So again, you know, being that Glocks are something like $500, $600, or your CZ-P01s are $600 or so, those may be, you know, more in your budget. So just going to do a couple of quick comparisons of size. I'm going to do basically all of them compared to the Glock. You can see that the grip height on the CZ is just a tad bit taller there. The width, again, I talked about that earlier. The CZ is a little worse, and the length is almost the same. So we're going to try and keep this part a little quick here. P07, the grip length is about the same, real close. The length overall with the back ends and the front, real close. And the width, the CZ does have the decocker on each side, which unfortunately does make it a tad bit wider. So if it didn't have those, I think they'd be really close. Moving on to the HK. Width-wise, again, the decocker and the safety there, or actually it's just the safety on the HK here, but the safety ultimately makes it a tad bit wider, and the handle grip length is quite a bit longer. The Caracal, probably the closest to the Glock. In fact, it is just the tiniest bit. I think it's 0.1 inches thinner or wider. The Glock is just a tad bit wider. The height is just a tad bit smaller, and the length is just a tad bit shorter. So that's, you know, an advantage of the Caracal. The Walther, Walther's a tad bit longer. It's about the same width overall, which is pretty good, and the height, the Walther just beats out the Glock just by about that much, about 1/4 of an inch, if that. Last one on the docket here in the star is the FNX9. The length, real close. The height, trying to match up the sights there. Height is much worse. You know, that's something to be worried about there. And the width is much wider. The FN is at having the decocker lever on both sides, ambidextrous, affects the width there. A lot like the CZ. I already compared the Smith & Wesson Shield, but once more, Smith & Wesson Shield's just skinnier. The grip length is much shorter with the non-extended magazine, the flush fitter. And then comparing the Dan Wesson here, the Dan has a longer grip length. It's wider just because of the safety there, but overall, you know, represents the 1911 market pretty well. So for as far as shooting, you know, I'm not going to show these guys being shot just because it's already is going on 20-30 minutes. And if you want to see some of these being shot, you know, check out some of my other videos. But hopefully you get an understanding of some of the advantages and disadvantages, my personal opinions. Again, you know, get out and shoot these things. Go to a local gun range, and a lot of them have a rental section that allows you to try multiples of these, and some of them will have more than these, some of them may not have these ones. Just try what they have. Try a couple different pistol ranges. It's exactly what I did. That's how I kind of got into shooting in the first place, after having been through the military and other training exercises. So, you know, learn how to shoot, take some classes. A pistol's only as good as the person behind it. You know, and so being trained and understanding, you know, how to use a pistol is viable to your own survival as well as the safety of others. So get out there, learn, try, and have fun. And I appreciate the comments, questions, you know, likes, everything, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to see more, just let me know. And I appreciate any subscriptions or anything else that you want to know about these things. I'll be happy to try and answer. Thanks, and have a good one.